Age of Alpine Ore, Book 1. Copyright 2014 by Mike Culligan. This is an e-book and it's downloadable. The book itself is an adventure story set in the 19th century, towards the end of the century when the Industrial Revolution was in full swing. Yet remote regions such as the Alpine region in which this story is set, now called the Silver Federation, some parts of the most remote parts of the Alps were only really seriously being affected at this time, and the book centres on the tensions that exist between traditional farming families trying to survive at altitude and the needs and the demands of modern commerce as the insatiable appetite for products, mass production and the global market really hit this central and very remote but beautiful part of Europe. And in the book there are some very strong characters and also some very strong viewpoints taken to the adaptation to change. Whichever viewpoint you take on how the events would happen, I've tried to balance it out so that you can see things from different people's point of view. Perhaps you sympathise with one character, perhaps you don't, but all I wanted to show was that these events that took place were real events, but perhaps I've used fiction with a fictional license to add some more drama, to convey a bit more of the sense of what actually happened. Age of Alpine Ore, Book 1. It's part of a trilogy. I hope you enjoy it. Age of Alpine Ore, Book 1. Copyright 2014 by Mike Culligan. That's me. Hello, I'm going to read you the first couple of paragraphs of my new book, Age of Alpine Ore. I hope you're interested. Here's a taste of what it's like. Chapter 1. Agnetha Welltime came into the world at 6 o'clock in the morning, 31st of January 1888. An icy cold day, strong winds and heavy snowfalls had swept the Silver Federation for weeks. Born at home, which was the family farmstead on Mount Rober in the Alps, she was the third child of Bruno and Wilhelmina or Hemi Welltime. Agnetha was a much welcome addition to their hard-working farming family. Weighing just over 3.2 kilos, she was a healthy baby with big blue eyes, strong kicking limbs, curly jet black locks and chubby cheeks. "What an absolute cutie!" roared the midwife as she cradled the newborn. She was yet to cut the umbilical cord, but welcoming the new addition of the family into the world was the right thing to do. Laying the baby carefully down on clean birthing sheets on the bed, she tied off the newborn's umbilical cord in 2 places, cutting it neatly between the ties. Newborn Agnetha kicked out, flailing her arms as she filled her lungs with the oxygen of life from the fire-warmed air in the birthing room. Already she was a willful and determined little soul. Outside, vicious winds battered the chalet. Shutters rattled dangerously as if they might be torn off their brass hinges. Only those windows which were truly needed had been left, but protected by iron bars outside in the sub-zero daytime temperatures. These very panes of glass were subjected to tremendous pressure changes as winds buffeted them one way and then another, slicing into them with blizzards of snow and hail at high velocity. So strong was the wind that it seemed as if it would join the family at any moment and sweep all away before it. Candles and oil lanterns flickered violently as gusts forced their way through the floorboards and ceilings of the heavily timbered building, which itself also groaned like a galleon under full sail, under the strain of the forces generated by the winds. Bruno Welltime peered over the midwife's shoulders as she cuddled his new baby daughter. "I see we've got a screamer. I've got to admit to you, Hemi, I did want a boy after 2 girls. Now I can see that I'm going to be even more outnumbered by all the women around me. However, I will say this for her, she's got a decent pair of lungs. That's very useful in this family. Not sure if her eyes will turn brown like mine, but if they do, then she'll be more on my side than all of you lot with your blue eyes and fair hair." Age of Alpine Ore, Book 1 by Mike Culligan. That's me, I'm the author. I wanted to tell you a little bit about what it took to write the book and what inspired me. First of all, let's start with the practicalities. The family at the centre of this book, the Welltime family, are very much into craft, and the inspiration for writing it came from actually trying craft myself and my partner And the sort of things that she made and I made are these. I'll show you some of the things. Let's start with the sort of things that would be available, materials to make in the time of the book I'm writing. Here we have a tea cosy with crochet shell stitch, decorated with roses, pink, cream, red, and also the leaf motifs as well. Adjustable as well. And this type of pattern here might well have been popular in craft markets at the time. Perhaps you might notice that underneath the tea cosy with the shell stitch is a beautiful Bavarian crochet item. This could be worn as a shawl. Here it's been used as a table decoration, but it's traditional, and this type of crafting skill is very much what I'm talking about in the book. A slightly modern adaptation, but using motifs such as this stag motif, simple felt wallets. Here obviously I've used Velcro, but whatever fasteners would be available. These are the sort of items that I imagine might be available for sale at a craft store at the time. All different colours of felt, stitched and lined, with pockets for people to keep their coins and notes in. Just simple felt wallets. Gift ideas. Perhaps gift bags might have been popular. I was thinking on the lines of motifs. What better than a teapot? These with their simple twine double tops can be shut as such and secure something inside, and opened as well with a drawstring. So a simple drawstring gift felt bag. Something a bit more traditional would be along the lines of this. These of course I made myself. These are machine stitched using different motifs, but again it's to a classic old 19th century style, and again the drawstring of twine like so. Gift bags, traditional, and again another pattern here. Of course these motifs on these bags, by the time I was writing this book, the time, the age it's set in, the first sort of sewing machines were well on their way, but people may well have done some hand stitching, not to this standard of course, but these are patterns. Here we have some typical belts that you can make on an inkle loom. Now these are very traditional for 19th century markets, and straps like these of course could be used decoratively for costume purposes, but also they might well be used decoratively in harnesses with the animals, or perhaps if you were a musician you could use this for a mandolin, a banjo, a lute or a guitar, which were becoming more increasingly popular in the 19th century. All different styles, all of these handmade by us on this inkle loom here. This is a traditional inkle loom. Here is one which can readily be purchased even today, and these inkle looms are used to make these straps. As I say, very adaptable to a number of things, but traditionally associated with craft fairs. Making these straps really did inspire me to think about how people used their hands more in days gone by in making products. Of course, it wasn't just straps that people made or gift bags. You had to make bags for people that would be both practical and hard wearing. And here we have a typical crochet bag here of a decent size that someone could carry their shopping in. And the idea is it's got a pretty pattern and it's also practical, and it opens up. They don't have to be lined, this one isn't, but you could line them if you wanted to. Again, traditional craft work. Carrying on with the theme of the teapots, which I seem to be fond of, we have a traditional felt bag cut to a particular shape, and again this one here, it's lined with fleece. You can also line them with felt, of course, which of course is a product of wool, and there's also some material here as well. But this particular classic design and shape is traditional, and this could be useful for also carrying things, perhaps decoratively. Such patterns, if they were three-dimensional, could be used as plant pots. I'll show you an example here. this particular three-dimensional design, one made by me, stitched together with newts on the front, is, as you can see, of the shape that would fit something that was oblong. If it was square, then you could put a plant pot inside that for indoor use. Here we have a shawl, and it's made on a style called broomstick lace, and basically you're using a very long crochet needle, is that right? And it can be worn as a shawl, and this sort of fashion item could well be very popular. And I understand from looking at this that individual items could be made to a certain extent to customers' tastes, and this would be expected with colour patterns, broomstick lace. Here we have a crochet book cover. Of course it could be used for documents as well. These days it's used for the more modern things such as iPads. But notice the decoration on the front adds to these items. This is needle felting, the two rabbits and the flowers. And these items here obviously are utilitarian. They're not just pretty, they basically are functional. This one's not lined, but as you can see it's hard wearing, and also with the buttons and the loops on them it's secure and easy to fix. This item here, which is a scarf, was made on this, which is a peg loom. These were readily available in the 19th century, and making an item on this makes an item which has got such a thickness and warmth to it. And also the whole point about this was it could be made by someone who only had, say, limited skills in making things with craftwork and possibly couldn't crochet to the degree that others could, but they could still make useful items for sale on market. Obviously this one has been decorated by an incredibly pretty rose and leaf pattern by my partner, but again it proves that if you were prepared to use your hands to make items, then there were simple, readily available items that would make beautiful things for market. And obviously if you had access to the fibres, and Alpine farmers in my book did, then it would have been a good idea to at least have part of your business selling craft items. If you're using a loom, then you can really up your game. You can start to weave. It helps you if you have two people, because to warp up a loom can take a considerable amount of time. The most simple looms, such as this one here, can make items using this type of warp here, and the weft of course, which is on this item here, which is called the shuttle, and they have these here heddles, and you can see here this particular loom here has the means to lift the different warp strings up and down alternatively, so you can move this shuttle in and out in the correct way. In fact, all you need to do is draw it across, and then this heddle structure here does all the work for you by making sure that the right warp threads are lifted and dropped down. And so you can make a simple item like this. If you're using a larger rigid heddle loom, then you can start to make more sophisticated items, such as these beautiful items here. This is a classic houndstooth pattern, which would be much beloved of traditional folk costume. It could be made into any number of clothing items, or just worn as is, because it's so beautiful as it is. And obviously these other items here, using different patterns on your loom, you can start to make a variation. At the ends of these you have these tassels. They're classic as what's left behind at the end of the warps, and tied into tassels to secure the loom work. And even with fairly simple patterns, you can get, by mixing the colours on the warp threads into certain patterns in very ordered structures, you get these patterns on your items. The most simple and most straightforward items are obviously those which just have the one shape and they're fairly narrow. And here we have an examples here. You can make them fairly wide, and obviously the larger the loom, the wider they can be made. And afterwards these items of course can be stitched, cut, shaped and made into all sorts of clothing items. So you're starting off with a loom here and you're making something quite sophisticated, but again using your hands. It's a handmade item. A circular knitting loom, if you use the entire circle on these, you can make items such as this hat here, all you need is a needle here, such as this one here. It looks almost crochet-like. Basically, the idea is you're lifting the wool up and over in certain very ordered ways. Of course, using just part of the circular loom, you can make something which is more akin to these. You don't have to use the whole of the circular loom. Obviously, if these were made of wood in earlier days, then such items could be made on these quite simply, really, with simple materials. But something as beautiful as this was made on this item here. Again, you can see that there's variation in the pattern, there's variation in the wool type used, and you're ending here with a bobble. Making bobbles, of course, is another skill all on its own. But with very thick wool and a very large needle, you can make these items here. These are very long scarves and will keep people very warm, even up to subarctic conditions. And you can see how well made and how thick the item is. It's quite a heavy item, and again, these would be popular because you're selling an item which is practical as well as fashionable. Going back to crochet, if you vary your stitches and you use things like a bobble stitch, you can make very large items. For instance, look at this bag here. This could be used to carry a lot of grocery, but again, look at the detail here of the bobble stitch here. And this item is made by my partner, and again you see that the same material, the same yarn or the same wool can be used to make the handles as well. So all in one piece. You make one part, then you can make the other part, and then these can be simply sewn in. You can see from these it's the continuation of this side structure here. It can just carry on up and around. That's the beauty of crochet, really. And inside it's not lined, just like the other items, it's not lined, but very practical, very simple designs. And above that is a simple item which was a gift bag made by me, and this was just a simple gift bag, but it illustrates some of the sort of starting points that I had when I wrote the book Age of Alpine Ore. On those long winter nights when you're thinking about what to make for market that might attract a customer's eye, why not think of pictures? These are needle felted. They're made from merino wool tops with fleece, and as you can see there's different dyes to them, using a single barbed needle by hand to blend the colours in, and it requires multiple stabbing of the material thousands of times over many hours to produce these beautiful pictures with gradations of colour. Here a marine scene, there a woodland scene where we have the owl and the badger and a mountain stream, and then in the background there a crescent moon. And also you can get great variation, and also you can see that there's a three-dimensional effect. Here we have crocheted twine to frame, and you can use simple wood, you can use red currant, you can use elder wood, and again twine to hang them. They look very traditional. And these type of skills would have been 19th century as well as today. If you're talking very traditional, then you might be talking squares or a tam o' shanter hat. Here we have a hat here, very thick, very warm, and very traditional for northern European climes. This would really keep your head warm even if you were working out of doors in exposed mountain areas or possibly at sea. And the idea of the granny squares is that you have a unit square and you can then bind it together to form different patterns. Here it could be for protecting a book or other documents, and over here we have a much larger shawl which again is made by squares, but notice at the edges of the shawl you can vary the pattern and vary the crochet style and extend it. These can be made as large as need be, and were often made as a team effort, and groups of people could make these together. A community effort in making such a thing is always a very positive experience. Mountain streams of